Hello, I'm Susan Gourley, writing romance as Susan Kelly. I'm going to read from The Marine's Queen. It is the first book in my Recon Marines space opera romance series. I'm going to pick a scene, actually two short scenes, that are in about the third chapter of the book after the queen of the title, Queen Callie, has crash landed with her female entourage on a planet, a desert planet, and they expect they're going to die, but they are rescued by this group of strangers that they figure out are the infamous Recon Marines, who are genetically engineered soldiers, and they are very frightening men if you only believe the rumors that have been heard about them. As they're walking through the desert, Callie, the Marines are taking them to an oasis, and Callie steps on a thorn bush and injures her leg with these poisonous thorns, and that's where I take up this story. Callie bit her lip as Joe, leader of the Recon Marines, pulled another of the barbed thorns from her calf. His hard gaze flicked up to her as a small whimper escaped her despite her attempt at stoicism. "One more," he said in a voice she could only describe as a growl. The other Marines dug shallow holes in the hot sand. Roz had spread a thin sheet of camouflage material on the ground so the women could rest. The wondrous cloth kept the heat of the burning sand at bay. Callie sat on Joe's thin pack while he knelt with her bare foot cradled in his calloused hand. Joe slid his other hand up to her calf to the back of her knee. Little visions of pleasure followed the path he traced and distracted her from painful wounds. Her reaction shocked her, but she couldn't stop it. She sensed Joe's displeasure with her, though his hands moved gently on her leg. His warm breath feathered against her skin as he leaned close to find the tip of the last thorn. He used his thumb and the edge of a small knife to grip the barb. He lifted his head and met her gaze. The pureness of blue in his eyes reminded her of rare, old earth sapphires. She nearly missed the flicker of regret, and her wonder at it was cut short when he tore the thorn from her leg. Callie shrieked and jerked her leg from his grip. She tumbled from her perch and landed on the burning sand. Joe lifted her quickly to her feet. "Sit." He pushed her back to her seat on the pack. He pulled a small cap tin from one of the sacks attached to his belt. Yellow, her protector, started toward them, but Callie waved her back. "I had to get the thorns out." Joe didn't look at her as he continued. "One of my men died from their poison when we first crossed the desert." Callie realized Joe meant to apologize in his short-worded, rude way. "I know you had to do it, thank you. I should have noticed it so you didn't step on the plant. Now we'll have to stay here and might not reach the water hole tomorrow." Joe rubbed some ointment from the small tin over the seeping punctures on her leg and then pulled a skinny roll of white cloth from the same pouch on his waist. His hands moved quick and short, pulling the bandage tight without pinching. His thick hair begged to be tested for silkiness as he bent his head over his task. Callie squeezed her hands into fists as they moved toward him without her conscious thought. He finished up and looked around, his clear gaze startling her anew with his intensity. He looked away and gestured toward his men. "We only have 4 field beds. You and I must decide how they're shared." 4 beds for 11 people? Outrage flooded through Callie. The Marines now had them trapped out in the desert and probably expected the women to give in with little protest. And Joe wanted her to help match them up? Joe's predator gaze touched on her and then swept over the rest of her party. "The children might be a problem." "A problem?" Callie lurched to her feet, trying to keep her bare foot out of the sand. She poked him in the chest with her finger and found him as movable as the marble walls of her royal palace. "Get this straight, soldier. We're not sharing beds with you or your genetic freak comrades. We'd rather die out here." The others surely heard every word. The Marine stopped digging and stared at her and Joe. Joe picked up her boot and handed it to her. "The sun will set within half an hour, Lady Callie. All of you will be frozen within another hour if you don't join us in our field beds. Though I'd guess the children won't last even that long." He gathered up his supplies and walked away to join his men. The Marines exchanged no words and started digging again. Callie winced as she slid her foot into her hot boot. She hobbled over to the other women. They lifted their frightened gazes to her. "What was that about?" Yellow asked. "He wanted me to decide which one of them each of you would sleep with." Saying the words added fuel to Callie's anger. "So?" Reba asked. "Reba, I know they're pretty to look at, but—" "Callie," Reba interrupted, "what are you thinking? We'll have to sleep together to keep warm. They're not digging those holes so they can have their way with us. Ross said they have special sleeping sacks to hold in the heat." Callie winced as she recalled her words to Joe. She watched the Marines as they went about their preparations. They pulled more thin sheets like the one the women rested on from their packs and lined the holes. No words passed between the men as they worked in perfect efficiency. How could she apologize for her harsh words? If she hadn't been thinking how beautiful Joe was, she wouldn't have jumped to such an illogical conclusion. No matter the Marines' rudeness and social ineptness, the men had been nothing but helpful. They'd asked nothing in return, and perhaps that was why she couldn't bring herself to trust them. Scene change. Joe set aside his shovel as Callie walked toward him. It might be best if the men didn't hear more of her opinions of them. Tar and Roz set up the condensation nets for the night. Vin, see about food for everyone. Callie stopped in front of him. "I misunderstood your intentions, Joe." He tried not to stare at her pale, smooth skin, so fragile appearing against the unforgiving backdrop of the desert. "Have you decided on the sleeping arrangements?" "I'm trying to apologize." Joe thought she looked more angry than sorry. His mind raced to interpret her meaning. She said she misunderstood, but she was still upset. Perhaps more details would help. "I will take the baby. Roz volunteered to take the child and her mother. Vin will only take one as he'll be the last settled." Red color rose to Callie's cheek. Could the thorns be causing a fever so quickly? She spoke through clenched teeth. "Are you some kind of robot? Having a conversation with you is like speaking to my computer." Joe repeated her words in his mind. Did she expect an answer to the robot question? He feared to say the wrong thing, so said nothing. Callie sighed. "The baby's mother must sleep with her. Sally still wakes up at night to eat she needs to eat in the middle of the night. Yellow can sleep with Vin and help him with whatever it is he needs to do." Joe gave a quick nod, eager to agree and move away from the confusion of her earlier anger. He knew his intelligence quotient topped the abilities of most men, but being around Callie proved his ignorance of so many things. Callie broke eye contact and the fever rose in her cheeks again. "As a leader, I should stay close to you. I'll sleep with you and Reba and the baby." "The plan is good," Joe agreed without hesitation. "Vin has food for your people." "Thank you." But she didn't move away. "You'll be safe tonight." "I know." Joe wondered if he hadn't responded fully enough. Civilians had conversations, didn't they? "The food is the same, but it has many nutrients." "Joe!" "Yes?" He stood right beside her. Why did she call him? Callie laughed, a musical sound from deep inside her. "What goes on in your head, and why am I trying to figure it out? The food is wonderful, especially compared to what we had." "You said you didn't have any food." Callie laughed again and walked away to join her friends. What the hell had she meant about the food? End of scene. Thank you.